The Honourable
Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about how this government has destroyed the Kiwi dream of owning your own home, and if you're living in the rural area like you do, Mr. Speaker, owning your own farm. And I want to tell Maurice Williamson that we'll look at the numbers, OK? We'll look at the numbers of how many applications the Overseas Investment Office has declined for the sale of farmland in the last 4 years. You know what that number is, sir? Zilch. Zero. None. Every one of the 400 applications by foreign investors to buy up New Zealand farms has been rubber-stamped by this government. And yet I remember John Key in 2010 saying, "We will not allow New Zealanders to become tenants in their own land." Empty words, hollow words from a hollow man, Mr. Speaker. I remember better what Mr. Key and Mr. English said in 2009. They said, coming into office, that they were going to free up the rules enabling more land to be sold. And then they did their focus group. The focus group said a fundamental part of what New Zealanders believe in, why our forebears came to this land, was to escape the squirearchy, escape being a tenant, escape being a farm labourer, and owning their own farm and owning their own land. So we got the words change from John Key, but we didn't get the practice change. Since John Key became Prime Minister, between 1 million hectares and 1/3 of a million hectares, depending on the definition, of land has been sold to foreign interests. Between 1/3 of a million and 1 million hectares, Mr. Speaker. But I want to talk about the other side, how it affects urban dwellers. In my city of Auckland, house prices in the last year have gone up by 116,000 or 25%, shattering the dreams of those young families who want to buy a home of their own, pushing up the rents of those forced to continue renting by 3 or 4 times more than the rate of overall inflation. And part of the problem, sir, is supply, but what aggravates the problem is that 10%, according to the Reserve Bank, of those sales are to foreign investors who never intend to live in New Zealand. Never intend to live in New Zealand. We today have the lowest rate of home ownership in 64 years. That's the statistic. Which one of those national members is proud of the fact that the young home buyer of whatever ethnicity can't buy their own home in Auckland? And they get outbid at the auctions every time by the person at the other end of the telephone from a country overseas who never intend to live in this country. What good does it do to New Zealanders, I ask, Mr. Speaker, to allow a foreign investor to come here, take advantage of nil capital gains, advantage of nil stamp duty, make a fortune, rack rent New Zealanders? What good does that do for the New Zealand family that want to do what you and I wanted to do when we were their age, Mr. Speaker, which was to buy a home that they could call their own? Mr. Speaker, at the very least, we should be slapping on a stamp duty of 15 to 20%, as they do in Hong Kong and Singapore, in case somebody thinks it's racist, or ban it entirely for existing homes, as they do in Australia, Mr. Speaker. This government does nothing. Dreams are shattered and foreign speculators are laughing all the way to the bank.
Jackie Dean.
Mr. Speaker, it's always very good to follow the